Hi everyone, Ellie here, and welcome to part 3 of my build log for Raphtalia from the Rising of Shield Hero. Like I said, this is part 3, so if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, make sure you check those out. There will be a link in the description below. In the last 2 videos, we worked on Raphtalia's red and brown overdress as well as her armor. So today, we're going to go ahead and get started on her cream underdress. This is a super cute dress and I'm really excited. If you guys are ready, let's get started. Now, I think it's important to point out that I started this costume when Shield Hero was first airing. So this means that we hadn't seen Raphtalia without her overdress yet. So in my head, I had a skirt and a bodice that were connected at the waist. Eventually, we noticed that this is a full dress, but I didn't want to start over, so we're just going to roll with it. First, we're going to go ahead and get started on the skirt of this dress. I'm using an off-white knit that I found at Joann's. I think this is a really beautiful material and it drapes really nicely, which is exactly what I wanted. I measured out the length of my skirt and then cut my material. Thankfully, my material was exactly the right width to be cut into 2 pieces of my skirt. So once they were cut out, I went ahead and stitched them together using a very basic straight stitch. Since this is a knit material, it's not really going to fray, so I don't have to worry about finishing off my edges. I can simply stitch this with a straight stitch. Once my skirt pieces are put together, it's time to hem it. I'm going to be hemming with a machine blind stitch. You guys hear me talk about hand blind stitching all the time, but you can also do it by your machine. The way the stitch works is it's a bit of a straight stitch mixed with a zigzag. Every zig, you are supposed to catch the edge of your fabric in a very, very small amount, so it makes just a little pinprick. You can see here, there are all these little pinpricks along my material, but from far away, you can't even tell that it's hemmed. However, once you flip it over, you can tell that this hem isn't going anywhere. It's nicely in place. With my skirt hemmed, I'm going to go ahead and attach it to an elastic waistband. I've gone ahead and made a circle of elastic that's about the size of my waist, and now I'm going to be running 2 gather stitches all the way along the top of my skirt. Once I've completed those stitches, I'm going to go ahead and gather them until it's just a little bit bigger than my waistband. This way I can stretch the elastic and that will gather it even more. Now I'm going to go ahead and pin this elastic all the way around the top of my skirt, making sure to keep my gathers as even as possible. Once it's been pinned in place, I'm going to go ahead and stitch over it with a zigzag stitch. It's important to use a zigzag stitch here because a zigzag is made to stretch, and since we're stitching over elastic, you want it to be able to stretch and fall back into place or to get larger to go over your hips. Once we have that elastic on, our base skirt is complete. Here you can see it on my dress form. It looks pretty cute and I really love the nice subtle ruffle at the bottom. Now I'm going to be draping my top. For my top, I got a ribbed knit material from the Spring Joann's collection. I saw this at Joann's and just knew I had to get it. It was absolutely perfect for Raphtalia and makes the costume look really realistic. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my side seams, and then I'm going to be putting a dart in the front along the bust line. After that, I'm going to go ahead and work on the back. Again, I'm starting from the center, pinning at the top of the neck, and then I'm going to put my shoulders into place. Once my shoulders are in place, it's time to do up the sides. And then I'll be able to trim off all of this excess material, and I'll have my basic shape. Now, I know that draping like this isn't very easy if you don't have a dress form, but I find that it's a great way to go about it. If you don't have a dress form, I would definitely suggest getting some mock-up material and just going along with the flow. You can find a lot of patterns online, or at least basic shapes that you can then alter to fit exactly what you need it to. So with my pattern kind of completed, I'm going to go ahead and take this off of my dress form. Now I'm going to be folding my pieces in half along the front center and the back center, and then going to be cutting the other side. This way my pattern is equal on both sides of my material. I'll do this for both my front and my back pieces. Once these pieces are cut out, we can go ahead and stitch them together. I've done up the sides as well as the shoulder seams with a basic straight stitch. Ba-ba-da-ba-da! And there we go! As you can see, I did take out the darts. That way I could make sure that my pieces were cut equally. Now I'm going to put my darts back in by simply pinning along the bust line. Once I have both the darts in place, I'm also going to stitch these down using a straight stitch. I'm using straight stitches for these parts because we don't need them to stretch since they're going vertically along the body rather than horizontally. Here you can see what the bodice looks like once it's right side out and has its darts put into place. Next, we're going to start adding our skirt onto our bodice. I want this to act as a dress, so I'm going to turn it into one piece. At the back, I'm adding a box pleat. This way, it takes up a little bit of that room at the waist, but still gives me room to move my shoulders. Once this pleat is in place, I'm going to place my skirt along the waistline of my dress form. With my skirt loosely pinned into place along the front and the back, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to pin my excess material along the top of my dress form. This way I can easily access the inside seam and start to pin this onto my bodice. Now you could just as easily do this off of a dress form, however, I figured it was easy enough to keep it on my dress form and made it easier to see what was going on. I'm placing my pins vertically along my seam, so this way I can stitch right over them and I don't have to worry about losing my place or my fabric scooting around. Once that's been pinned into place, we're going to go ahead and stitch it with a zigzag stitch. Like I said earlier, we use a zigzag stitch when you need something to stretch, and since this is the waistline, we definitely need it to stretch so we can get the dress on. Now it's time to move on to the sleeves. Raphtalia's dress has these two-part sleeves. The top is a very poofy sleeve, whereas the bottom is more of a skin-tight and fitted sleeve. I'm going to start by cutting out the fitted portion of the sleeve. I've measured my arm from my upper arm to my wrist, and then I've also measured around my upper arm and my wrist to create this pattern. It's a bit of a trapezoid. Once I have that pattern cut out, I'm going to go ahead and pin it into place, then stitch it together using a straight stitch. If you're using a ribbed material like I am, it's important to note which way you cut your patterns. Raphtalia's stripes run vertically down her arms. I definitely cut a pair of sleeves where they were running horizontally and had to redo them, so take my warning. Once it's stitched together and turned inside out, I go ahead and try it on to make sure it fits properly. As you can see here, it looks pretty cool. Next, I'm going to be starting on the puff portion of Raphtalia's sleeve. I've made a lot of sleeves before, so I have a basic pattern in mind. But in order to make this as gathered as I want to, I'm going to extend this pattern and make it super duper long. So I've pinned my pattern into place and I'm cutting out the shape of my sleeve. Since I'm just kind of winging this pattern, it does take a bit of alteration to get it right. Once I've cut the pattern out, I go ahead and sew one of my sleeves together. At this point, I try it on and notice that's way too much material. So I cut off about 3 or 4 inches of my pattern and then retrace the slope of the armscye. At this point, I'm happy with the pattern and can stitch up both of my sleeves. Once they've been stitched together, I'm going to go ahead and add a gather stitch along the straight edge of my sleeve. This is the part that's going to be attaching to our long fitted sleeve. Using my gather stitch, I'm going to pull my loose threads and gather this up to where it fits inside of my straight sleeve. Once I have it gathered, I'm going to go ahead and pin it to the long sleeve and stitch that together, again using a zigzag stitch. Once our sleeve is put together, I try it on and I think it's super duper cute. So I go ahead and make up the second sleeve. After that, it's time to attach them to the bodice of our dress. Again, I'm going to be running a gather stitch along the arm's eye of both of my sleeves. Just like the other part of our sleeve, I'm going to pull my stitches to gather them, and then I'm going to place this part of the sleeve inside of my bodice and attach it to the arm's eye. When you're attaching a gathered sleeve to a bodice, you want to try and only gather the top part of the sleeve. If you gather underneath where your armpit is, you'll get a lot of bulk and it won't feel very comfortable when you're wearing it. Once that's pinned into place, I'm going to go ahead and stitch it together, again using a zigzag stitch. Once you have both your sleeves attached, your dress is almost ready. Let's see what it looks like on a dress form. Ready? Let's go! Oh, I think it's so cute. I love how poofy the sleeves are. And as you're wearing it, they'll poof out a little bit more as well. Next, I'm going to be working on Raphtalia's collar. Now, I'll be honest, collars are a lot of trial and error for me. I don't have a pattern that I like quite yet, and I struggle with draping one by hand. This took quite a few tries to find one that I liked. Once I had a pattern that I liked, I went ahead and cut 2 copies of it from my material and interfaced each of them. This way, the collar will stand up straight. Now, I'm going to be adding some super cute scallops to the top of this collar. I'm tracing around a spool of thread, making sure that my edges meet, and I try to keep everything kind of evenly spaced. Once I've traced out my scallops, I'm going to stitch these on. I've done a tutorial on scallops before, but here's a quick recap. I'm going to use a straight stitch to follow my guide, and then once I'm finished, I'm going to trim off all of my excess material. Once the excess has been trimmed, I'm going to go ahead and clip all of my curves and my corners, trying to get as close to the seam as possible without breaking the seam. Once that's been finished, you can go ahead and turn your scallops inside out. These were perfectly sized for my fingers, so I just kind of poked them into place. I think scallops are super elegant and beautiful. I love adding them to any costume that I can. Once I had my collar piece finished, it was time to attach it to my dress. Starting at center back and using the center of my collar as a guide, I went ahead and pinned this all the way around my dress. At this point, I went ahead and stitched it on with a straight stitch. I know, it seems like this part will stretch, but since we interfaced that collar, it's not really going to stretch anyway, so you want to make sure that it holds nicely in place with a straight stitch. I love the way this collar looks. I think it's super duper cute. But how are we going to get this dress on since the neck won't stretch to accommodate our head? I'm going to be cutting a little bit of a slit into the front of this dress that I'm going to finish off with gold pleather bias tape. I think this is what Raphtalia's design looks like, and if this dress were made in real life, like it is now I guess, this is how it would have to be constructed. So I've measured off that slit, and next I'm going to attach some gold pleather bias tape just like I did to the arms of the dress. With the dress finished, the last thing we need to do is create Raphtalia's super cute bow tie. Here I have made some long strips of red dupioni, which is the same material I use for Raphtalia's overdress. I've turned these into long tubes and now I'm folding them to create a bow. I have 4 pieces and then one super long piece that's going to go around my neck. I've folded the pieces in half and gathered them a little bit, and now I'm attaching a few longer pieces that will act as the tails of my bow. Once I have my bow in a way that I like it, I'm going to go ahead and use my hand needle and stitch it into place. I'm also going to attach it directly onto my longer piece of ribbon. This way I can put it onto my neck and not have to worry about finding the bow or anything like that. It's all one piece. I'm also going to take a little scrap of my dupioni to create a knot. This will make the bow look really clean and give it a nice center. Once that knot is stitched into place, I'm also going to add a snap. This is how I'm going to put the bow on and take it off once I'm done. The other end of the snap goes onto the long end of the ribbon. So this way it wraps around my neck and snaps into place. Now let's take a look at our finished dress on our dress form. I think it's really cute. I love the way the bow sits. I think it's perfectly poofy. And while Raphtalia's real dress might be all one piece instead of the 2 pieces that we made it, I think our version is still really cute and no one's ever gonna notice. So let's try it on. In the end, I love the way this dress came out. It's really comfortable, super lightweight, and it looks exactly like Raphtalia's, especially with this ribbed fabric that we found. So let's go ahead, put on our overdress and armor and see what that looks like. Oh, it's so cute! We are getting so close to being done with this costume, I can almost taste it. Next time, we are going to be working on Raphtalia's boot covers and her gloves. I'm really excited to finish off this costume, and I hope you will join me next time. Until then, make sure to keep sewing, stay positive, and have fun. I will see you all later. Bye! I'm doing a little bit of a test here to see what my volume is doing. Boop-a-doop-a-doop. We're talking about Raphtalia. She's really cute. I like her ears and her snoot.